Good evening. Today is June 20th, 2013. This is a meeting of the Revere City Council's Ways and Means Subcommittee. Tonight we have a full lineup of departments to go through. We will start with the Public Works, Department of Public Works, and that is on page 88. I'd like to recognize the committee members who are in attendance. We have Councillor Guanasso and Councillor Haz and Councillor John Correggio. Donnie, the way I've been kind of managing the meetings is give the department head a few minutes to go over any changes that they have in their budget, and then we can open it up to questions from the committee.
There's really not too many changes in our budget from last year, other than our capital fund, where the SRF funding comes out of. That's just where the biggest changes are, and obviously the MWA water rates. We do go up the CPI on rubbish disposal, but we've tried to keep the budget as tight and as close to it was last year. Except for a couple items. In parks, you'll see there's a little bit of money that we want to expend on improving some of the local playgrounds for the children. But other than that, we try to keep it as close to last year's budget as possible, and I'm here to answer any questions that the councilors may have.
Any councilor? Thank you, Donnie. Any Councillor Guanasso?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Donnie, as the budget was submitted, do you feel comfortable with that budget? Do you feel like you can get your projects done within that budget?
I really would like to see more money, and we're planning, long-term plan is to see more money spent in street and sidewalk. That's a sore spot for us. And I think according to what I hear at the legislature, it seems that the Senate bill has doubled the Chapter 90 monies that are coming up this year. So that would be a great deal of help to us through the community development efforts, because the number one complaint we seem to be getting right now is sidewalk repairs. It's been a nasty couple of winters besides last year. In the last 5 to 10 years, we've had some difficult winters, and the streets and the sidewalks are pretty beat up, and that's where I'd like to see, more improvement as the years come down, and hopefully this year with state funding for Chapter 90.
Well, I've been pushing you on a couple of streets.
You're not the only one.
And I know, and so when you say that, I know you have it with a little smirk inside, because I've been on you for a couple of months regarding sidewalks.
And justifiably so, Councillor.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just my job to relay the message. In terms of your budget, I don't have any questions, but I just have one question in terms of the facility that you operate out of. Has there been any dialogue with the mayor in reference to a new facility?
Yes, we have had preliminary meetings. We've even had some discussions about putting a team together for the design selection. I think a lot rests on what transpires with Suffolk Downs at this point. I think if that happens, it'll be an immediate go. I just don't know how much longer the facility we could stay in it. It's in dire need of a lot of work.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And then from visually seeing it, not being one who works there, but it seems to me like we'll be spending putting good money into a bad situation,
and I think that was
we won't recover anything with that.
That was former Mayor Ambrosino's opinion. It's kind of my opinion as well. I mean, just to do the roof alone would be over $1 million, and you'd still have an old facility. So
right.
a new facility is in order. We did have some preliminary discussions with Malden. They were looking to see if we could combine and put a shared facility. We might be able to share cost, and those seem to not be able to work for either one of us.
One other question.
Yes.
Equipment. How's the equipment?
Equipment is okay for now, but I would say in the next 2 years we're going to need to start, looking.
You have a wish list already established?
I do. certain things I'm getting through the SRF qualifier. We're getting a camera and TV truck, which is going to make, you know, drainage and storage work a lot easier for us. We need a catch basin truck that we need. We need another truck, but we're trying to get through this year. We're trying to see where this goes. What I'd like to do is have a capital plan at some point where you're buying, you know, a couple of pieces of equipment every year, instead of me coming to the council every 5 or 10 years looking for, you know, $1.5 to $2 million for equipment. I think it's better well served that, you know, we buy it.
Have we ever thought into a practice of leasing?
Leasing is difficult because what we did lease when I first came here for the first winter I was here. We didn't have adequate equipment to do the snow plowing, so we did lease. And what happens is they go out there and every little scratch, every little nick, they come out there. So it's not just the leasing that gets you. It's when you bring the equipment back, they really try.
Yeah, I can appreciate.
And I'll tell you, if you take care of the equipment, I mean, we still have equipment that Councillor has bought while he was mayor. It's still running and up and running. So if you buy the right equipment for the right job, it will last, because we don't put a lot of miles on it. It's just hard. There's a lot of run time.
Takes a beating.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Guanasso. Councilor Has.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Don, you mentioned the facility that you guys are working on. I understand you and the mayor, as you indicated, have discussed it. When we discussed casinos in Revere, my request would be to mitigation that we get a new facility for the DPW. I think that was paramount for the safety and sake of the employees down there, and also OSHA's involved with it. So we have to watch what we do down there. Some basic questions. Snowfall account. How much are we carrying over into 14?
Our original appropriation is $200. We spent $255, so we had about a $46,000 deficit in that account for our contractors. I think there's a little bit of money that's left over from our employees' snow removal, so there'll be a little bit of money there.
So there'll be transfers coming up before July 1.
I think they've already been proposed. I think they've been to the committee. Just need to be voted on. Okay. The transfers that I'm aware of is the street lining account has a surplus in it, and the rubbish and disposal each have a surplus in it, and those accounts they'll be requesting a transfer to cover deficits in other areas.
And talking about the Chapter 90 money, major thoroughfare Broadway seems to be getting beat up all of a sudden with the heavy trucks on it, etc. Is there any plans to look at Broadway?
We have had discussions with community development. We're talking about streetscapes. Once we get all this lighting done, we like to put some type of decorative crosswalks and things of that nature after the repaving of Broadway.
After you repave?
Yes.
Okay. Also, I've talked to you about many times, and it's an issue. Newhall Street, the cut across the street seems to be sinking once again. People who live in the area have commented to me, how do we permanently, instead of me calling you up all the time and you do what you have to do, to make sure when a contractor comes into Revere, they leave, but we make sure that the trench is done
I've called
properly.
a couple of times, and I can't figure out what the problem is with that trench, boy, because the gas company has been very good the last 2 or 3 years since you guys took them to task. They've been doing a milling process, and for some reason that trench seems to continuously sink. So I'm going to have discussions with the National Grid representative, and they may need to re-excavate that trench to find out what's going on with it, because they've been there 3 times already, and it's continuing to sink. And Revere Street and other projects.
I'm not complaining about the budget. The budget's basically what it was last year, etc. There's no increases in salary other than the 2%. The last issue, Mr. Chairman, will be Sergeant Street. You have 2 holes. You guys, I put a motion in. You did it to the best of your ability, but again, it's still sinking. You know what? As you're coming out of the exit from the high school,
Where, from Charger Street?
Not Charger Street, Sergeant Street.
Sergeant Street.
When you come out from the school to parking, there's one big dip there. and then at the next intersection is another big dip.
At Newhall,
Yeah. Not Newhall, Sergeant Street.
Sergeant Street near the school?
Yeah. You know when you're coming out of the school, the Wheeling School?
Yes,
You take a left, there's one right there.
okay.
And at the next, I believe it's Tedford Ave, the next one. And the guys fixed it once, okay? Is that because of the manhole or the water cap is so low?
It may need to be raised, Bob, but the biggest problem we've had recently is the amount of rain that we had. They've been out there
Oh, yeah.
trying to patch, and if it's a moist condition when they put down the asphalt is not holding properly. And, you know, you don't want to leave it because we know when we get the rain that it's only going to get that much bigger and worse. We had 15 days this month that we did
Rain.
have rainfall, so we are really, really behind. I had the conversation with Councillor Guanasso. He's worried about a lot of projects that he has planned in his ward, and we just haven't had the time, nor the weather has been working in our favor to. So we're about 3 weeks behind on our potholes and sidewalk work right now.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Councilor Has. Councilor Correggio.
Thank you, Chairman Arrigo. Donnie, I know you're doing the best you can for what you have. How does it look basically to get more personnel in the public works? I know you guys are down quite a bit.
That's been the challenge for me for the last 14 years, Jack. It's just not, obviously the economic conditions have to change. We need some growth in this community where we can, have some money to put elsewhere. There always seems to be another department that, listen, police, fire, school department, we understand that those are very critical areas that need to be funded. It's just that the DPW, and it seems the City Hall employees as well, are always the last on the list when things, they come to us for the first cuts, and they come to us last to restore the people that need to go back in place. So that's what we're dealing with. We've been dealing with it for a long time, and it was a problem before I came here, so it's not even, germane to the present time. It's been a problem for quite a few years. But we do the best of what we have, and, I take my hat off to the guys. For what they have, they do get a lot accomplished.
That's the only question I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Correggio. Councilor Reardon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Donnie, just to follow up kind of on what Bob suggested about the issue with the compaction issue. And I know Councilor Powers and I rail over this constantly. Is there anything in the budget that will allow us to have someone from the DPW assigned to these people when they start filling these holes in? Because they are not doing them right. Either that or it's rocket science and it just can't be done right. I don't know, but it's...
It can be done right, Councilor. There are times I would obviously love to have somebody who would just make that their full-time job to even stand over them while they're compacting, because the proper way to compact a trench is in 6 to 8 inch lifts. And I'm sure you've all seen it because I've seen it. They pull up with a truck, they dump a truckload of stuff in there, and it's 2 to 3, 4, 5, and 6 feet deep by the time it looks fine when they first do it, but within several weeks or so there seems to be a problem. Some contractors are better than others, and some contractors never have a problem and sometimes have a problem. So it would be ideal to have somebody out there while they're doing it, but the manpower that we have just doesn't.
Well, let me ask you this. Do we have someone or staff who are trained in compaction?
Yes, we do.
I said rocket science. That was being facetious.
Yeah.
I don't believe it is rocket science.
It's not, Councilor. Yeah. It's a process like anything
else. So you have
else.
people that could do it, it's just that you can't spare them to do it.
Correct.
All right. What do we charge them when they dig up a hole? What do we charge them for the
There's a $200 trench opening fee, and they're required for a year to go back and maintain that trench. The biggest problem we're having right now is not with the gas company or our local drain layers. It's with the company that's doing some of our SRF work right now. We're on them. Last year we didn't have much problems, but I know, Councilor, you've experienced some tough.
Well, I've got this one on Main Street. They actually tried to fix it, and
Right.
It's as bad as when before they
Right.
fix it. They wasted their time.
Right. So.
But let me ask you this.
We had that conversation, Nick Reichstrom and I. Nick has been very helpful to me. He's been, stepping in on some of these issues. He handled that with Green Mountain this morning. And
Any idea how many, on the average, trenches we are opening on an annual basis at this point? And I understand
I don't have it off the top of my head, but I can't give it to you. I can give you a list of all the permits that have been pulled.
I don't want a list. I just was wondering if you had a rough
Well,
estimate.
some years it could be as little as 50, and other years it could be 100.
Yeah.
And the gas company, the last couple of years, has been the big, because there's a big push on, not just here in the Northeast, but throughout the whole country, to upgrade the infrastructure, because the gas lines are at a point where they're falling apart everywhere. So we've had conversations with the people in Malden, Everett, local community. Everybody's having the same problem with the gas company. But I will say that the gas company has stepped up their efforts to improve their trenching process. They're doing a lot of milling and infrareding of the trenches now, and they're making them wider. Before they were doing these little, so now they're making them wider, and it seems to be working so far. Really the only trench we have a problem with the gas company right now is the one that Councillor Hass alluded to on Newhall Street. That seems to be the only one.
Well, they destroyed Reservoir Avenue. I mean, they
Right.
destroyed it.
Yeah.
It looks,
Reservoir
feels
Ave
bad.
is a street that should be put on the Chapter 90 list, Councillor. It's spidering. If you go up and down the street, it's spidering everywhere. So in order to do a good trench, you have to have good sides. You should have, and a lot of our streets don't. You should have a minimum of 4 to 5 inches of asphalt on the road, so that you can make it. And some places we have 2, some places we have 3. And in the instance with Reservoir Ave, it's so old and hasn't been done in so long that everywhere you go, it spines. So if you jackhammer or cut it, everything just peels away. So it's not a good even trench all the way up the street.
Well, there's got to be a better solution. When I think of it, I'll let you know.
Okay, Council, I understand, trust me.
Thank you, Councilor Reardon. Any other councilors have questions? No. Donnie, you do a great job with a pretty lean budget. You do not have enough guys. Having seen what other cities have available to them as far as resources for their DPW, you're doing a fantastic job with what you have.
Thank you, Brian.
So,
I appreciate the compliment.
with that said, I do have a couple of questions, and not necessarily about salaries, but more about, and you touched on a little bit, the streetlights and the rubbish. Those, so the rubbish line items, I know there was a little bit of money left over in 13. It sounds like you're not anticipating that for 14, given that they've increased, but I just
We use
wonder why.
We use the consumer price indexes already. We talk to, especially for the rubbish removal. You have contracts with Capital Waste, and they have employee contracts, so their employees get pay raises and things of this nature. And so we use the consumer price index as a method of bringing it up. And then what the rubbish removal, it fluctuates year to year. Sometimes
It depends on weight, right? Depends on,
everything's on tonnage.
Yeah.
And what happens is some years you have a good year. A few years back, probably 06 through 09, we had a lot of flooding in the area. People's basements were getting, so we actually have the open truck take all that stuff away. Last year with Sandy, it wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
So actually this year we've done pretty well, and I think the recycling program is really starting to take effect.
I was just going to say,
Yeah.
if the more recycling that people do, the less tonnage you end up seeing on
Right. I mean,
the trash removal.
Years ago, the recycling was more of like a commodity, and sometimes you would get checks from the KTI over there in Somerville, Charlestown line, but we haven't received money for recyclables in a very long time. But still, the point is that people need to recycle because it's roughly $70 a ton to get rid of trash, where it's roughly $20 a ton to get. So for every ton of recycling, even if we're paying for it, we're saving $50 on each ton that we're putting to. So it's kind of an unknown of what's going to happen over the course of the year, because the weather has implications to, especially where we're a coastal community, we get some flooding, and basements get flooded, people start throwing a lot of stuff out. you have a heavy windstorm, people's property gets damaged, we take a lot of stuff, away during, incidences like
Yeah.
that. But
And on the streetlights, I mean, looking at the actuals from the last couple of years, it doesn't look like you've come close, like you've come right in below 600,000 each year. I wonder, is there any opportunity for savings as far as streetlights if we actually were to buy the lights from the electric company? I know some communities have started to do this where they buy the lights for $1, basically, and you end up having...
George has been working on this with the city auditor as well. So
Okay, and would it be for the entire city? Would we be buying the entire city's lights, or?
Well, what we're looking at now is we're doing a review of exactly what it would be to purchase the city's lights and how much we'll save for each one. It's been an ongoing process. We've been looking at it for at least a year and a half. So we haven't chosen what lights are going to be bought. We have to go through the consultant report and decide, because we had it done a number of years ago, so we're reviewing that again before we make any decisions. In fact, we own the lights out front, if you notice the new ones that were installed.
Yep.
So
Because it ends up being, I think,
it's
in the
cost
long
savings.
term, it ends up saving, it can
does.
save the city
It
a lot of
definitely
money.
is a cost savings and something we have been looking into.
Yep,
Okay.
great.
And I just want to say this, DPW, you mentioned equipment. DPW is one of the 3 departments that we're looking at with under city stat so that they can they will be providing the city staff group, and we'll be reviewing a plan for the purchase of new equipment, and when will they, and have them look at a timeline of when they will, their equipment they're going to need and the equipment that needs to be replaced. So that's also along with the police, the fire, and the DPW.
Okay, thank you, George. In the parks budget, I know we had an attachment with some new parks that are being maintained. I know that in the past we haven't appropriated too much money. It's almost $100,000 jump from, $80,000 jump from the budget last year. And I looked at the attachment, and there's only $15,000 in new parks being maintained. I didn't know if there were enhanced or going to be enhanced maintenance to some of the parks that we already do work on.
There's some plans, Paul Argento is Parks General Foreman. He has more of a breakdown than I do. We had planned on being here, both of us together this evening, but his son was called away to something in Pennsylvania. His son's only 17 years old, so we had to escort him there to Pennsylvania. He'll be back on Monday. I can give you a breakdown on what our plan.
Yeah, oh,
Okay. What's that? Do you know anything about the parks? Paul's got that. Which parks are being selected for the?
Well, Louis Pasteur was one of them. Louis Pasteur Park was one of them. And there was a list of parks that we increased that's why we increased the park maintenance account for that, so that we could do more maintenance at these parks and really upgrade them rather than just maintain them.
okay.
I don't have the list of parks off the top of my head, but I know Louis Pasteur was one of them.
Yeah, it might be helpful to see what we had what we had last year, just to compare what parks that are not new but are getting additional
And maintenance is being upgraded as well. I mean, there's a lot of the mini parks, especially on the Councillor Haas that were installed. They're starting to show their age a little bit, and they need some. There's a lot of carpentry work that needs to be done. A lot of structures need some work on them and some replacement. So these are the things that Paul has been working on, and I'll have him give you a total breakdown of what his
Okay.
thoughts and ideas are. Council.
All right.
Okay.
Those were my questions for the DPW budget. I did have a couple of questions on the water and sewer. I don't know if folks have other questions. I'll open up to councilors on the water and sewer if they want to talk about water and sewer. Councilor Guanasso?
Well, everybody knows now the cat's out of the bag, and people are pretty upset, and we are upset. We've got some exposure in the media, whether it be printed matter and TV. And I think, again, there's not a complete understanding of what this is all about. Number one, we've got two evil empires working against us. We have the Mass Water Resource Authority, which is a establishment that's been created for the federal government. And then we have the federal mandate under the court decree that we've been levied against us for $100 million. I don't think enough of the public understand or are aware of that particular situation, because they just don't understand that we have to start paying $10 million a year for the next 10 years. I mean, that's a tremendous obligation. But it's not like one that this is not something we brought about. This is something that started many, many years ago through our old infrastructure. And because of the decaying matter, and it wasn't attended to 30, 40 years ago, 20 years ago, we're stuck with it. And it's infiltrating bad water throughout our systems, and the federal mandate is that we must stop that. And how do you stop that? You have to repair every single line in the city, because every single line in the city is leaking and exposing sewerage to the grounds. So that's contamination. So that's why we're stuck. And I don't know how much and the unfortunate part about it, Mr. Director, is that a lot of people don't view us on TV. If you go, as you do, you traverse the community, a lot of people have satellite dishes, so they don't have this Comcast hookup. And so that eliminates quite a bit of the population from knowing what we're saying. And I don't know if it was really covered that well in the local newspapers as to try to make them aware of what we're doing. So and the other thing is, and I hate to even say that, everybody controls their own destiny in this, because water consumption is based on the usage of the home. And so if you control that within the home, cut back on that a bit. But I know that doesn't work. But I think we have to do some sort of educational process to let people know what we're going through.
Well,
any answers on
Finance Director Anzoni and myself, along with our consultants, CDM Smith and others, we did have a public forum last week at the Romney Marsh School. Councillor Reardon was in attendance. Councillor Patch was in attendance. That's the beginning of, trying to get the word out to the public. Anything that we did pass out at that meeting also went out into the water bill. So information is being submitted, because I don't believe that. I think TV is the biggest way to go out there. So those meetings that we had will repeatedly be repeated over the airways. They'll probably be edited to put some, more information in there for the people. I don't believe that the newspapers are as prevalent as they might have been at one time. So now, you need to use this, and, my kids tell me you need to use these social networking ideas and things of this nature, which we're working on to get the word out.
But, Mr. Reagan, not everybody has Comcast. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I understand.
So they're not getting that signal from.
If we send a flyer in their bill explaining to them, what the circumstances are, this is something that's beyond our control. This is something that's been mandated by the federal government. We have to address the problem. That $100 million may or may not be that number. I mean, we've seen significant changes in the system. I can tell you just this past week, with all the rain that we've had, that if this had happened, if this particular type of rainstorm had transpired, 2 years ago to 10 years ago, we would have had somewhere in the vicinity of 50 what they call sanitary sewer overflows. And during the last rain event, we only had 3 throughout the entire community. So what has being done is working. But there's other components to that. There's pump stations. There's drainage. Drainage will be another issue, because that's where the Clean Water Act comes into play. So once you remedy the situation within the sanitary system, you still have what they call illicit discharge and elimination program, and that's from people having cross connections, the damage that's already been done by these SSOs over all these years. The culverts and creeks and waterways are going to have to be cleaned, and that's just the process of this federal mandate. and we don't know what that number is going to be. But you know, we're trying to do the best we can.
Hopefully
we're
it's
trying to keep the
reduced.
price down as the best we can.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Director.
Thank you, Councilor Guanasso. Councilor Has.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, once again. What's the status of the ongoing new meters into Revere, new water meters?
New water meters, CDM Smith is one of our consultants. They're going through the process now, but George has been more involved with that from the financial standpoint, so he knows more about it than I do.
We've been reviewing, Councilor, the implementation of radio monitored meters, so that when it goes into the home or the business, what happens is you don't need a reader meter to go in any longer. What happens is it comes directly back to the computers here in the city, serve it back here in the city, and we can constantly monitor the water reads. That's the basic what the system does. We brought on CDM, myself and the Superintendent of Public Works, Don Goodwin, and what we're reviewing is, first of all, we have to look at the type of meter we want, the type of system that we want, and we've been going through that. However, now we have to look at the funds to fund this. So we're looking at maybe applying for an SRF loan from the state revolving funds, which is an FRF loan, or bonding it. So it's in the works, but it's in the works so that the meters that we now have are getting older. They are leaking a bit. So we're looking at, we have this project going, and hopefully we can look at exactly how much it would cost, and we have an idea how much it's going to cost, and whether or not we want to fund it or go through an SRF.
Because the last time we went throughout the community and put all new meters is basically when I was mayor.
When you were mayor, so how many
And
years ago
hopefully
was
the
that?
upgrades have been going on right along.
That had to be about like 1995.
Yeah.
94, 95.
They're old, because
Yeah,
they
it had to be
do,
around there.
yeah, oh man. No, but again, I think that's a great.
Excuse me, Council, watch that.
Right. That's a great source of revenue,
It
without
is a great
question.
source of revenue.
Now,
Right.
Donnie, are we still finding people circumventing the system?
Yes, no matter what you put in, people will try to beat the system. But the best part about this new technology is that we can actually look at an account and watch it all day long. Yeah. If we suspect that somebody's doing something, then we can just watch them. Now, on the other side, people come in, they're always looking for rebates on the water because, oh, I went on vacation, this happened, and the city's always been, pretty lenient, and they give a lot of money back. So what would happen is if you had a leaky toilet, and you went on vacation and you came back and you had a $10,000 water bill, the city does give some grace, but that cost doesn't go away. It gets attributed to the rest. So what would happen is that would red flag instantly. If your house was, I'll use just round numbers, if your house was using 5,000 gallons a day, and all of a sudden they see that the house is using 5,800 gallons a day, right. They detect that there's a problem there. They flag it. It comes right back to water sewer billing downstairs. It has the ability to contact your computer at home or even a cell phone to say, you have a problem. We're notifying you of this problem. Don't come to us in 3 months and tell us that you have a bill. So that will close it up, because and the PM meters are a problem too. We need to implement some type of program for them as well, because I think that's where the most abuse is going on.
Absolutely.
And a lot of communities have just done away with them. And, so if people need them for their house, for, irrigation and stuff like that, then the only way to really do it is to hard pipe it in, have it sealed like a regular meter, so it can't be moved around. And, they're just too easy to tamper with. There's too many ways that you could beat the system.
The last question I have, Mr. Chairman, is, has anyone done an analysis to come up with monthly billing in the water and surge?
That's all part of this new metering program, because that metering data automatically gets downloaded. Now we go out with the handhelds, then we have to download it into the system, and then the bills go out. Well, that information could be downloaded on a daily basis if you wanted to.
Because, it'd be a lot easier for to rent the water payers.
And I think
to pay
it
monthly
takes, like,
instead of
listen, your
quarterly.
oil and gas bill and things of that nature are really not much different, except that you get a bill once a month and not every 3 months, and so it kind of takes the sting out of paying a $300, $400
absolutely.
bill as opposed to paying a $100 bill.
At least you're looking at it. That's
Yeah,
moving in the right
we've been
direction.
looking in
Thank
that
you.
direction, yes.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor Ridden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Councilor Haas actually asked the question I was going to ask, but I do want to say to anybody out there listening that meeting that we had last week at the Rumney Marsh was extremely informative. It was well worth the hour and 15 minutes, whatever we had down there. Anybody who wants, with the understanding Councilor Ganassa suggested that not everybody has access to either the cable or a computer. If you do, and you have questions, that's the first place to start, because that was really an informative meeting, and it'll certainly be a primer for anybody who, and everybody has a right to be complaining about it. No, I'm not discounting that, but I think everybody also has a responsibility to understand what's going on while they complain.
Thank you, Councillor Ridden. I have a couple of comments. Just first off, the wireless water meters are a no-brainer. Absolutely no-brainer. I think I've worked in the water department, and I worked in one that we installed wireless water meters, and the level of customer service that residents got because they were getting phone calls to tell them, hey, you might have a leak, changed the culture of the department, because now I'm sure the people that are getting a 40% discount are calling and they're not very happy when they call the water department. What we saw was we were reaching out to people and telling them, hey, you had a water spike last night, heads up, check your toilet, check your faucet, there might be a leak. And you wouldn't believe the amount of goodwill that we gained by telling people. And they said, you know what, I called my plumber and I did have a leak, and I'm grateful that you guys called, because I would have had a $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 bill. So I think that the wireless water meters are a no-brainer. And that is really why when we talk about using free cash, I think these are the types of things that we should be using free cash on, because at the end of the day, $1 million or $1.5 million to buy new wireless water meters are going to end up, well, a little more than $1.5 million, even at $3 million. Well, I know if you do a pilot, and it depends on the financing, but if you can do a pilot for $1 million, you take your highest water usage accounts, and you install new meters in your highest water accounts, you make your money back in the first year. And you could do that with $1 million up front, and we could do that with free cash, or a stabilization money, and get our money back and start to gain some goodwill.
You're using free cash for the water enterprise fund, okay? Our stabilization fund's for the general fund. We run a separate enterprise fund here, as you know. So to use the stabilization funds for the enterprise funds, I think is questionable at this point. Okay. But if we had more money in the enterprise free cash, we could look at that and say you can use some of that. And I think that total right now is about $886,000.
It's better than bonding it or hitting the ratepayer. If we could if we were able to buy new wireless meters without hitting the ratepayer, and you would see
it would save money.
A marked difference in the rates. Ultimately.
I agree, but here's the thing: is when I said we are looking for alternative funding, we're looking for funding. We're looking for alternative funding so it doesn't hurt the ratepayer, and that's what we're doing. But as far as using our stabilization fund for that purpose, it's two different accounts. We have to keep them separate by law.
Or you could use free cash.
Right.
Any type of
You can't use free
Any
cash
type of
either.
reserve, either
You
free
can-
cash or
well,
stabilization, it's the same
You're right,
thing.
but
We're all
let me
using it the
just
same
explain
way.
this. It goes to the same place, but it's not the free cash general fund, and the free cash enterprise
I
fund.
understand.
That's it, right,
I
the two
understand.
things. But if we could get more of a surplus in our free cash and their water funds, would be a great idea.
Yep.
I agree with you.
And so on the, you mentioned, Donnie, the 40% discount. How much should we give away in the 40% discount? Hit the mic, please. Thank you. No, I'm not talking about the senior discount. I'm talking about when somebody has a higher water bill and they come in and they say they want
Oh, I
40% off their bill.
Oh, that's a different amount. I don't have that amount.
That how?
Right,
Oh,
it
okay.
sends out
Is
the bill.
that an amount
We're
that
actually in the process of looking at, once we get these new meters in, it's going to be the policy that we don't give that 40%.
Oh, no, there's no
discount
reason
again.
to give that
Right, at that
to give
point.
that away.
And that's
at
one
that
of the
point.
ways we'll save, because
Yeah.
we'll, one, save on water that we already paid for. And I have, the superintendent and I have constant discussions with ratepayers that, and water users actually, usage, and telling them that although they say, well, we didn't use this water, well, it went through your meter. So we're continuously talking and telling the city still has to pay for that water. So you're correct, there'll be a great amount of savings if we get this, these radio monitored meters in, because if they do have a leak, as you said, we can call them and tell them, hey, you know what, you got a leak, we got to check this out.
Well, and you have the opportunity to claw
Right.
back some money that you may find when you go out to install these new meters. You might find that some folks might not even have a meter,
Have a meter.
and you can end
Right.
up clawing back some money
Right.
from those ratepayers.
From those ratepayers, that's correct. But as far as how many we give out, we're not, we're strict about who we give it out. It has to be extensive. I don't want anybody out there to think that we just, okay, you come in, you have a high water bill, and we do this. No, there's a policy in place that, reason why I do it, extenuating certain, and they have to demonstrate to us the extenuating circumstances. And then, after a discussion usually with myself and the superintendent, we sit down and a decision is made.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, George,
I
while
thought you were looking at what Councillor Haas was asking for, the senior discount, and that I know. It's about, how much is it? That's about, you know what, I think I have the exact amount here, too.
Mr. Chairman, most people have no idea about a senior discount.
I actually told my father to sign up for it because he's now
Absolutely.
eligible for it.
And the city's had it for a couple of years now, from what I understand.
Yeah.
That should be another PR thing that the mayor sends out to the subscribers, that there is a senior discount. Huh? You have to get out to DPW and there's a form you fill
No,
out.
it's right downstairs at Water Sewer.
Right.
If I'm not mistaken, it's like 190,000, it's not a lot of money.
No,
excuse me,
it's not a lot
190
of money, but
no.
again, it's spread out over all of the other subscribers.
Right, no, it's right.
Because you have to make up that deficit.
No, it's 190,000 is the PMM, the outside water meters, and I think it's, we put in the rate, we put in, I think it was almost 400,000 for the council, it was almost 400,000 for those discounts, senior discounts, almost 400,000.
George, one second. I just had a question about the communication that we got with the pro forma recap. The last page of it has the offset receipts from the enterprise funds.
Right.
And it's at 17.8.
Right.
I know we're at 22.4 being appropriated in the enterprise fund. I didn't know, is that
There is a difference.
What's
yes.
the difference, I guess, is my question.
And if you notice that when we hand out the budget to you, we put the enterprise budget, which is this booklet here.
Yep.
Okay, it says the budget. You look at the bottom number, 22,481, 853.
Yep.
That's the number for the cost of running, we're estimating the cost of running for next year, the enterprise fund, okay?
So the 4.6 is our cost appropriated in the general fund that
Right.
are transferred to.
That transfers out, whereas the water and sewer, and that's what happens, if you look at the top number, 7,865, 689, you see how that comes out,
Okay.
okay?
And who are the shared employees that are part of that $1 million in shared employees?
Well, shared employees have people in the collector's office, the treasurer's office, anybody that deals with the mayor, because he answers, he has, a lot of times he comes in and people go to him for water and we have a percentage set out as far as the time the person puts in to the water department in other departments who handle water issues. So we prescribed a sort of a percentage of their duties. So how much of the time in the collector's office employee, treasurer's office employee, in the mayor's office employee answering questions, and the auditor's office, and the purchasing department, all these employees have to be taken into account and pushed in there. And that's what the shared employees total would be.
So you basically try to take a percentage of what their workload for water and sewer is and apply that percentage to their...
What their workload is, and that's what they come out as a shared employee.
Is there any way, do we have the list of positions and the percentages that they get applied?
There's one, we have that. We have that to get to that number.
Okay.
We actually do it.
All right. And finally, just in the budget generally, we have $1.4 million in capital improvements. And I wondered what is the difference between that and the money that we've bonded. Just recently we bonded, I think, another $20 or so million in water and sewer improvements that I would assume include some of these, some of these things like the truck and training and equipment.
Right.
Are these not part of what we bond?
No, that's not part of a bond. The training, the portion you have there, if I remember the section of the budget correctly, from memory, where the the camera truck is.
Yep.
All right, we included training on that because although that's coming out of an SRF fund, the training for it is not. So we put in the budget the amount, that amount for the training of that. Okay. And the other issues that you have in there are the same.
So there's like CDM Smith, there's National Water Main contract, the emergency repairs contract, legal support for the consent decree. So those are all things that we cannot bond for, or?
Right.
They're not SRF.
They're not, right. They're not SRF eligible. Okay. Be covered by SRF, but however, they are part of the water department.
Okay.
And I actually do see the number that we put in. The expense for the PSM is $450,000, and the amount for the discount program is $197,000, and the PSM, which is the outside water meters, is $450,000 that we have to make an adjustment for. So we have to put that in there. So those are those numbers that you asked for, Council. Okay.
And then my last question is.
Well, wait a minute. All right, we'll talk about this. Well, where's your part?
It's right here. It's all tapped out right here.
All right, you got it? This is mine. Thank you. Sorry, Council.
My last question is on the water division capital outlay line item. That's $430,000. Are we?
What page do you want?
Oh, sorry, 121. Are we still paying that removal of excavation materials, DCR?
That's an ongoing, that never goes away, Councilor.
Yeah.
That's kind of what Councilor Braden was referring to. Some of these trenches, I have to tell you, that they're ours as well. And, I'm sure Councilor has dealt with it. It's not only is it a problem stockpiling, but sometimes it's even difficult to get rid of. And now the new rules and regulations that are coming, I'm trying to implement and I'm working on it with Marie Zalandi downstairs in purchasing, to instead of disposing of the equipment, there's a recycling process that you can bring into the yard, and they'll crush it, and you take other materials that we have, like we actually bring like a lot of concrete from leftover concrete and curbstones that have been laying around. They actually make a fill for the road that has a 95.5 compaction, which is as good as anything you can buy.
Yeah.
And so once you're left with that byproduct of the recycling, now I don't have to go out and purchase fill to go back in the hole. So it's kind of like we can get a recycling process going where anything we take out of the ground, we can recycle it. So at some point in the near future, we can put it back into the ground. And they claim it's anywhere from 50% cheaper to 2/3 cheaper to recycle as it is to dispose of. So we're taking a hard look at that, because that's a hard number. And actually, I have 2 years of it in my,
Yeah.
because we haven't.
I only ask about it because it looks like the last couple of years for actuals, in fiscal year 2012, in capital improvements, we only spent $5,000. And
That's,
having 430 appropriated.
Because, well, what's happening is that material is still in our yard. It hasn't left the yard.
Yeah.
So we still need that appropriation to pay for it. There was a problem with a past contractor that had some severe legal issues, and we just chose not to use the contract because we didn't want to. So we're putting a new contract together now. So there's actually 2 years of material sitting in the yard that needs to be disposed of, but I need to encumber those funds in order to pay for the disposal of those materials.
Yeah. And what is that Dci Waterline Payment? Is that on? I assume that's on the beach.
Yes. Back when they redeveloped the whole beach, I contacted the mayor and I said, if the idea for us for growth on Revere Beach is to develop the waterfront, then we need to have sufficient water supply along the beach. So while the state was tearing up the road, it made no sense not to install a new water line. So what we did is we went down. Obviously, it's like any other infrastructure. It's very, very old. We had a 10-inch line on the beach, but we cut a coupon out of it, and the tuberculin built up inside the pipe was 4.5 inches in some places. So you don't have a 10-inch pipe. In essence, you have a 6-inch pipe.
Yep.
And if you're looking to have enough flow and enough volume of water to support the build-out that potentially could go on Revere Beach Boulevard, that you wouldn't be able to do it. So we made a deal with the state, and we've been putting that money aside year after year. And at some point, they're going to come in and tell we owe them like $1.25 million.
But we haven't paid anything.
It's there in the account, and when we finally get to that, no, we haven't paid it.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, because just looking at the actuals, that's what threw me off. Is
Right.
that it doesn't look like we've
It
spent
carries over
250.
every year.
We have,
Right.
So okay.
We haven't spent a dime because they haven't.
How many
built it.
years have we?
It's about 3/4.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
We're getting there. We're getting to the point.
Well, yes, we're getting there, but hopefully they won't bill us. The state can do those things sometimes.
All right. Well, Donnie, keep up the good work.
All right,
I
thanks,
appreciate the
Brian.
time, and thank you.
And thank you guys for your help over the years. I know it's not easy sometimes, but, it's a difficult process for all of us. But thank you for all your help. I appreciate it. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Next up, we have the Election Commission, page 10. Come on.
Excuse me?
Good.
Oh, brief, sure.
Good evening, Diane. If you want, you can speak a little bit on your budget, and then we'll open it up to committee
Sure.
members.
Honestly, councilors, nothing much has changed over the past 12 years. We run
Yeah.
a very frugal shop. Poll workers' salaries have held steady. Rental, it's just rental of local polling locations, say $100 per, or $50 per election. Data processing, it's just basically to produce our street list book, and those costs have held steady. It's for programming of memory packs and maintenance on the equipment. So, I mean, it's just increments, yeah.
Jim,
Thank you, Diane. Councilor Correggio.
Thank you, Chairman Arrigo. Diane, just one quick question. I have no problem with the budget. What do you foresee for the future as far as new voting machines? I know I asked that question quite a while ago. I had put a motion in. What is your comment about the new voting machines for the future?
The state is looking at a machine as we speak. I don't have any date that they're going to certify it. It's taken them quite a while to pass certification. There is what's called, there's probably about 25 communities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that are using the Optech Eagle that we have. The rest of the communities are using an AccuVote system. It is an older technology, and it's really not something that I would want to move forward with, and I'm kind of waiting to see what the state does, as well as the rest of the other 25 or so communities. So, I mean, if you know, this equipment we purchased in 1997, if the city wanted to really change, it would be to the AccuVote, but I'd really like to wait and see what happens with something new coming down the pike.
All right, no, I appreciate your comment. I would just stand fast on that till we see what the future holds.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Correggio. Councilor Guanasso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Commissioner, there doesn't look very much here that we could talk about this budget. It's very lean. As you repeated, 12 years, I've seen something similar to this every year, so I don't see anything. What's the discussion? Go about your job and try to do it as best you could with the limited budget you have.
Thank you, sir.
Keep up the good work.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Guanasso. I don't think any other councilors have any questions. I, myself, do not have too many questions about your budget. There's nothing there to really question. But I do appreciate the hard work that you do for the city, and I know you've been available nights and weekends, and you put a lot of work into your job, and I think we all appreciate the hard work that you do.
Thank you, and I have to say it's not without the tireless efforts of my staff, Caitlin Welch and Pat Mazzoni. I really am very lucky to have them for staff, and we work very well together, and we just get the job done.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, next up we have City Clerk, page number 3.
Good evening, Chairman Arrigo, committee members, and Councilor Correggio. I'm here to present the Office of the City Clerk budget. Let's see, this year we have a total operating budget of $277,067. Of that, the salary account is $247,67, and the office supplies account, I did request a slightly higher additional appropriation for a copy machine in the hallway, since that one is now in complete disrepair.
Great. Thank you. Oh.
In the budget, during the preparation, there was some...
Council.
Right, in the City Council. We have two issues that came up. The Clerk of the City Council committees, it will be increased from 4 to 5 at the request of the City Clerk. Of the City Council office supplies account will be increased from $63,360 to $79,200. The mayor is in favor in this, and we'll be sending a letter up to the City Council asking for the additions of those amounts into the supplanted into the budget.
What pages were those, George? Sorry.
No, they're not on there. These are a new. These are going to be.
Oh, these are two new.
That was actually under the City Council budget.
Okay.
Right, but they're going to be new items that are coming up.
Okay.
And there's also going to be one more new item is in the Director of Finance budget. There's going to be $20,000 added for a new OPEB report. The last one we finished was as of 6/30/2012. You have to have it 2 years, so it's going to have to be done by 6/30/2014.
Okay. Any Councilor Guanasso?
There was mention of a increase that's not in this information for the City Council.
Correct. That was
Any increase for the City Council I would obviously be opposed to. Being a member of the council, I speak only for myself. I am satisfied with what we receive, and I don't see a need for an increase.
no.
I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear. I apologize. It's not an increase to the council salary. It's an increase to your office supplies account, and the other increase is an additional clerk to the committee. So there's no increase going to the City Council.
An additional clerk to the committee?
To one of the committees. Yes, instead of a 4, there will be 5.
Why is that? Why is that needed?
Well, that's been what's been requested. You can talk to the city clerk about that. But
City Clerk, can we ask why that's necessary? You need another assistant?
Yes, this is currently Joanne and Debbie receive clerk of committee on top of being clerks of council. I do not receive clerk of committee as I attend all the committee meetings and do committee work for the council.
So it's not an additional person?
It's not an additional person. It's an additional stipend for doing committee work after hours.
Okay. All right. I have no further questions.
Any other councilors? No. I do not have any questions, so
Okay.
thank you. Keep up the
Very
great
good.
work.
And I just wanted to give the city council an update on the updates to the council chamber. The PO was submitted at the beginning of June, and usually I have an email back from the gentleman at AVI SPL. 6 to 8 weeks, they should be in here installing everything. Okay?
Great. Thank you. So next we have the parking clerk, page 4.
There's a slight budgetary increase due to the pay raises authorized for Unit B, and that's why the increase is in there. Plus, I think there's some retroactive for some people. As you're aware, the parking clerk's office is a non-tax levy department. It's off budget. By that, I mean that the full cost of the operation of the department is borne by parking violation revenue and parking meter revenue. For fiscal year 2013, which will close in a week, the parking violation revenue thus far is $707,314. The parking meter revenue is $84,964 for a total of $792,278. The operation of the department budget was $174,562. Our IT vendor, $40,000 for total. When you take those expenses against the revenue, we're returning $577,716 in net revenue to the city.
And that revenue, I'm sorry, I'll open it up to councilors who have any questions. Councilor Has.
Of 577, all right? Why wouldn't we hire people, 2 more parking clerks to work nights, weekends, etc.? It's a money-making proposition.
It would be difficult to, I think you'd need some male people out at that hour doing that type of work. It could be done. We have asked in the past if any of our female parking control officers wanted to work that night shift, and we were told no. We could
The reason, it's a no-brainer to me. All the trucks come in, they're not there during the week in the residential neighborhoods. All the trucks, they take the trucks home, which is illegal. What's that, a $50 fine per night?
That's what's being proposed coming up.
I think it makes sense, Mr. Chairman, to add, whether you put it out for, Revere residents, and if the gender gap is male, you accept that.
Right now, we're running a staff of 6. We're using all part-time, except for 1 full-time person. Yeah. We're not obligated to provide any benefits or any pension. So that's working out very well so far. Yeah. We could go with a night shift if we were told to do that.
I think myself it makes sense to go that route. But again, it's up to the mayor. We would have to, during the budget deliberations, ask him to implement it. And then it's up to him to check it out with you to see what the economic benefit to the community would be. But $600,000 is great. I mean, Joanne does a great job on the beach and the surrounding areas, but, and that's money for Revere. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Has. Councilor Guanasso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Clerk, I can't tell you how many times I've had requests from neighbors in reference to, and people in my ward, in reference to commercial trucks being parked overnight. I think if we hire a couple of people for this particular responsibility, operate them out of the police department, and I think it'd be self-sufficient. We'd get more money than we could possibly handle. The personnel itself would be paid for completely, and we would gain a tremendous profit from it. But the bottom line of it would be is that our residents would be best served by ridding the area of these big trucks. I have a little side street off of Revere Street, Lowell Street. There's about 4 or 5 big, huge trucks that park there every night, and they take up like 2 spaces. And I don't go after them fully regarding parking on both sides of the street because there's no place to park. But having a broad mind about this, it's an injustice to those residents who are bearing up to this all the time, that they have a commercial truck parked in front of their property, and that there's commercial trucks parked on side streets. And our streets are so narrowed off of Revere Street and all off of Broadway that, God forbid, a fire apparatus or personnel can't get to a particular incident where they need help. I just think it's behooving us to do this, to employ these people and work them out of the police department and give them some sort of rights. And if they need police assistance in any manner, and if we have to hire males for that particular, I don't want to classify anybody because there are a lot of females who could do the job well too. But if we feel like we have to bully up a little bit, we have to do what we have to do to protect our residents who are law-abiding citizens, just asking for some relief from these people who think nothing of parking their trucks in front of their property. And I just think it would make the city so much nicer to rid our community for all these trucks. But,
Well, we could do it if we're, directed to do it by the mayor and council. We could undertake that.
well, I think it's part of our ways and means that we can ask for this. And again, we're not going to tax any additional money to our citizens. We're going to gain money from this. It's going to, and once that happens, and when we find out that we don't need, then we can act accordingly. But there's always going to be a need. People are always going to violate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Guanasso. Councilor Correggio.
Thank you. John, thank you for coming before us. I think you're doing an excellent job with the parking. I do want to comment. I'd like to see something, mechanism implemented about these trucks, because I got a lot of calls up in the Malden Street area, people taking trucks home. They're from another city, and you see that it's on the door of the truck. They take the truck home, and as Councilor Guanasso said, it takes up 2 spaces, and it's a nuisance throughout the city. So I would support something to be implemented, working with your office to see if we can get something going.
Well, currently under our street sweeping program, we have people out there at 5 o'clock in the morning, and for that early 5 o'clock period, she does a sweep of a particular area. Anytime she picks up trucks, liveries, taxis, buses, she tickets them at that hour. But then she has to go on to do her normal street sweeping. So she only gets a very few hours to do that end of it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Correggio. I do have a couple of questions, but I wanted to talk first about the opportunity to potentially add a position or two here. My only concern is whether or not we're projecting or if we're counting on another $577,000 or $600,000 to be added to our bottom line for the general fund, because we're already using some reserves. So if we're using reserves and we're counting on that money for fiscal year 14 to be part of the budget, we are going to have to maybe take a little bit more in reserve. So I want to get a full understanding of, number one, I guess a 577, does that get, is that part of free cash, or does that just get transferred to the general fund?
That just goes right to the general fund.
Okay.
I have been made aware, and I've only spotted it recently, there's a proposal currently before the Traffic Commission. I'm not sure who the sponsor is, but it looks like it may have been some of the merchants or property owners in this general area who have petitioned the Traffic Commission to remove 30 parking meters in this general area, and also to terminate Saturday parking enforcement. If that does occur, I project that we will have approximately $110,000 less in revenues if those proposals are adopted.
And so I guess this is a question to the finance director. Are we planning on using that, or are we counting on that money to be part of the general fund?
Do we normally count it as a general fund? Yes, we do.
Well, are we counting it for 14? Right now,
Yes, we are counting
like
it for
the
14,
budget that we
yes.
have is
Right.
is including
That's counted in
revenue.
there, it's not been taken out, right.
What's that?
That's, excuse me, that has been counted in there, yes,
Okay.
for
All right.
2014.
So
It
anything
hasn't
that,
passed.
any reduction in
Any
that, so the
adjustment, you're gonna have to make
110,
the adjustment like this, right.
we'll have to make up.
You have
we
to
would
make up,
Okay.
right.
All right, I
On the
just
bottom
wanted to
line.
be clear on that. And then, my only other question, I know, I had mentioned, I think last year, was the idea of, new parking meters that are, either a kiosk or, the ability to take debit card. Have we looked into that at all, or is there any?
Since the last budget presentation, we purchased from the town of Brookline all of 600 digital meters from them, and they are functioning very nicely. We paid $3 a piece for them.
Wow.
So normally they're $75, $80 a piece.
Yeah.
They have a smart card capability, but not a credit card capability.
Okay.
And smart cards are nice, but you have to go to a central place to purchase the smart card. So all they have is a coin capability right now.
Okay. And then my other just comment, I think, and we talked about it, some other councilors had mentioned the problems with parking. And I would say, and I think this is more for my colleagues, that we need to start thinking about an overhaul of permits and city permits as a whole, because we do have a lot of neighborhoods, especially in Beachmont, I know is very difficult. There are a lot of cabs that park overnight. There are a lot of commercial vehicles that park overnight. And we should start to think about a citywide either permit that would be used, and then having a beefed up parking division that will go out and aggressively tag folks who are not residents of the city or who don't have their car registered in the city. And
Again, I've been made aware that the Traffic Commission has recently passed a new ordinance to ticket livery vehicles, taxi vehicles, buses that are not located at a taxi stand, a livery stand, and that they are in the process of adopting a $50 fee. So our parking control people will be out there once these are adopted, issuing a lot of tickets to livery vehicles, taxi cabs, buses that are on the street.
Yeah. I mean, and I think we'd want to target the cars that are not registered in the city.
Well, it's impossible to distinguish that.
Well, if we have a permitting program that if you get a sticker or a city permit or a city sticker when you register your car, and you pay your excise tax, you get a little ticket that's and it's free, and it's a resident
yeah.
parking permit, and it's something to think about. I think it's more for my colleagues to kind of mull over. Councillor Correggio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I spoke to you quite a while about the Beachmont section. These people, either from Winthrop or other cities, and they're using the permit from a resident to park. They use the train to go to Boston, and they're tied up there, I mean, for days sometimes. They work some type of a night shift. Does it look like we could get a better handle on that?
Well, due to our current staffing, we operate with one full-time person who is primarily assigned to the street sweeping program and the early morning ticketing. We have two other part-time employees who start their shift on Tuesday through Saturday at 11 o'clock in the morning. So we miss the early, we don't have staff to go out in the morning, and our staff has to see that person walking from a street in Beachmont to the MBTA station, and we have to go back and check to their car to see if they have an illegal resident parking sticker, which many do. There's a lot of counterfeiting of those resident parking stickers going on. So it's difficult for us to do it with the current staff we have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Correggio. Thank you, Ms. Henry. Next up, we have the Board of Assessors. That is page 32.
Chairman, members. Our budget is pretty much the same as last year in the lower accounts. This is another interim adjustment year for us, so the cost of that interim year adjustment is minimal, $31,000. Next year will be a reval year, and we will see an increase in the budget for that, but that's next year. Everything is going pretty well. What's happening is there's a lot of projects, and projects mean growth to us, which is a good thing, and there are a lot of projects like about to happen. I'm not sure that we're going to get the growth this year, but I'm looking for, again, for next year to be something that's substantial, and especially if a couple of things happen, we'll be in very good shape as far as the assessments of the city go. So.
Okay. Thank you. Any councilors have any questions? No councilors? Okay. I guess I have a couple of questions. One is, I know there's is a principal clerk position still vacant? How long will it be vacant? Or
yes, we actually, what's that? We really don't want it to be vacant. I can't answer that because I'm not sure as to how long that will exist. Yeah. Lisa Sinatra, who was laid off maybe 2 years ago. More than that?
Even though she was eliminated from the budget 2 years ago, you're still requesting that to be filled?
Well, we continue to request it, yeah.
Yep, I understand that.
Okay, and then...
Yeah, we continue to request it. It was a position in our staffing, so therefore we continue each year to request that that be filled.
And then, Councilor Hess.
Yeah, the office manager is who?
The office manager is Dana.
Dana, okay. John is the, what, data manager?
John is the data collector, the data manager.
And who's the special assistant?
That is Susan Schaefer.
Yep, Susan.
And the principal clerk that is filled is Kathy Gravelisi.
Kathy. Okay.
Can you get a better data manager?
Pardon me?
Can you get a better data manager?
How about,
Can we get a better data manager?
Huh?
Best.
Have you been getting any calls lately?
I love it.
Right.
So one other thing, and as we're looking at the list of salaries, it does look like for the final budget 13, compared to the recommendation, there's a little bit of a jump, and I didn't know if there was any...
And the chairman's salary.
Yeah.
And that is because in November of 2011, the state legislature passed and the governor signed pension reform, which actually allowed a retiree who's back into the system to make more money, which actually made that salary closer to the bargaining unit negotiated salary.
Okay. I think it just
by law, it gave you the ability to do that.
Okay. And it may have thrown a few people off because we were told by the mayor that there were no salary increases. So it's just, although it looks like it's within your salary range.
Well, it's within the bargaining unit salary.
Yep.
It's just, I was depressed in salary because of that limitation. Yep. And with pension reform, that raised that ceiling. So yep. It was closer to. Okay. Actually, the bargaining unit increase, if you will, was the same as everybody else.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
So that's been negotiated through your union?
Yes. Right? Yes. That salary is a union negotiated salary, right?
And then my last question is just on new growth. I know we had talked before during our discussion about McKinley School, about new growth and the potential for the city to kind of see it maybe double in the next couple of years. And you touched on it a little bit. Do we have any better read of whether or not that's going to happen? And I guess, have we built in any new growth into this budget?
Well, as I said, there's always some new growth. And historically, without anything major happening in the city, our growth is usually around 400,000. Yeah, I was going to say, yep. Between 200,000 and 300,000. However, what we're looking at is, for example, we know that there is some apartment units going up on Ward Street.
Yep.
And we anticipate that for next year's growth. There is the North Lot project Eurovest happening, and we anticipate that. So there are, without talking about what would be
The
a
opportunities
game
that
changer
are
for
out there.
everyone,
Yep.
those kind of things, again, are serious growth, but they're not happening this year.
Yep.
If I just may, Chairman, is that when the estimates were made for this budget and when we hit our bottom line, I kept the new growth just about the same as last year, all right? Because that way there we could use something as a base, and I think the expectation may be that there'll be more new growth than there was last year. But I wanted to be conservative in the estimates, so I used what was last year's.
I only asked because in the projections that we got as part of the McKinley, we saw some, those projections have changed even for fiscal year 14. Appropriations are a little bit higher this year than I think you had projected back in March. But I just want to make sure that we're on kind of the same path, because if, like I said a couple of days ago, if anything happens and we don't have that new growth, we could be in a little bit of trouble. So I just want to.
We were hoping for that new growth.
I hope so too. I hope so too. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, gentlemen, and
Any other questions?
thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thanks. And with that, we will conclude tonight's Ways and Means hearing. We will be back on next Tuesday. Thank you.